A 9-year-old boy watches his father die of poison. Within weeks, his entire tribe packs up their tents, loads their horses, and abandons him, his mother, and his 6 siblings on the open steppe, to starve in winter. That boy's name was Temujin. You know him as Genghis Khan, the man who built the largest contiguous empire in human history. But here's the question nobody asks. What does that kind of betrayal do to a child's mind? Welcome to Minds of History, the channel where we don't just ask what famous figures did, but why their minds worked the way they did. We dig into the psychology behind history's most powerful, brilliant, and terrifying people. And today, we're starting with the biggest one of all, Genghis Khan, because his empire wasn't born on a battlefield. It was born in the mind of an abandoned 9-year-old boy. Let's get into it. Because when you look closely, almost every strange, brilliant, and terrifying decision Genghis Khan ever made traces back to that one winter. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see the psychology of history's greatest conqueror in a way most documentaries completely miss. Let's set the scene. Mongolia, 1170s. No empire. No nation. Just dozens of tribes locked in an endless cycle of raiding, kidnapping, and revenge. Trust me on this one. This is the worst possible place to grow up, and Temujin was about to find out why. His father, Yasuge, was a minor chieftain. And one day, riding home across the steppe, he stops to share a meal with a group of Tatars, a rival tribe he'd raided years earlier. Steppe hospitality said you feed travelers, even enemies. The Tatars fed him poison. And what happened next was arguably worse than the murder itself. With Yasuge dead, his clan, the Tay Shad, did the math. A widow, 7 kids, no warrior to lead them, dead weight. So they left. One elderly man tried to protest, and they speared him for it. Then they rode off and left a family to die. Here's where the psychology gets interesting. Psychologists have a name for this. Betrayal trauma. Harm inflicted not by strangers, but by the very people you depend on for survival. And research shows it hits differently than any other kind of trauma. It doesn't just teach you the world is dangerous. It teaches you that your own people are dangerous. Now, most kids in that situation break. Temujin's family didn't, and the reason is his mother, Holon. She dug roots. She fished. She hunted marmots. She kept 7 children alive through Mongolian winters on food that was considered beneath even the poorest herders. And every night, according to the secret history of the Mongols, she drilled one lesson into her sons. Alone, you die. Together, you survive. Remember that lesson. It's about to become the operating system of an empire. But before Temujin learned to unite people, he learned what he was willing to do to a traitor. And I'm warning you, this part is dark. His older half-brother Bekhter kept stealing food from the family. A fish here, a bird there. In a starving household, that's not sibling rivalry. That's a threat to everyone's survival. So Temujin, around 13 or 14 years old, took his younger brother, crept up on Bekhter, and shot him with arrows. He killed his own half-brother. Over a fish. Now here's the detail that tells you everything about his psychology. When their mother found out, she was furious. She screamed that he was like an animal that eats its own kind. But Temujin never expressed regret. In his mind, Bekhter wasn't family. Bekhter was a betrayer. And betrayers, in Temujin's emerging worldview, forfeited everything. You know what's fascinating? Psychologists who study childhood adversity talk about how survivors often develop rigid, black and white moral categories. Nuance is a luxury. When you've been abandoned to die, the world splits cleanly in two, loyal and enemy. Temujin's brain built that binary at 13, and he would apply it to millions of people for the rest of his life. And the steppe wasn't done teaching him yet. The Genghis, the same clan that abandoned him, heard this fatherless boy was surviving, growing, becoming dangerous. So they hunted him down, captured him, and locked him in a kang, but basically a wooden board around his neck, turning him into a slave and a trophy. And this is where something remarkable happens. A servant family, people with nothing to gain, took pity on him and helped him escape, hiding him in a cart of wool while search parties stabbed through the piles. Think about the lesson his brain just recorded. My own noble kin enslaved me, and strangers of the lowest class saved my life. If you're enjoying this so far, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps a small channel like this one. Now, let's talk about how a traumatized teenager weaponized his own psychology. Here's what worked for Temujin, and honestly, it's one of the most counterintuitive moves in history. Every other steppe leader promoted their relatives. Blood first. Always. Temujin looked at that system, the system that had left him to starve, and threw it in the trash. In his rising army, rank went to the loyal and the capable, period. A shepherd could become a general. And several did. Subutai, one of the greatest military commanders who ever lived, was the son of a blacksmith. Think of it like this. If steppe politics were a game, everyone else was playing family monopoly, and Temujin invented the meritocracy cheat code. Warriors defected to him in droves, because for the first time ever, talent actually paid. But the trauma cut both ways, because the same wound that made him generous to the loyal made him apocalyptic toward betrayers. Take his blood brother, Genghis, his closest childhood friend, his sworn, and when Genghis eventually turned against him and lost, Temujin actually offered to renew their friendship. Genghis refused. He was executed. But the men who handed Genghis over, betraying their own leader, Temujin executed them too, in front of the man they betrayed. Read that again. He rewarded enemies who stayed loyal to their own lords and killed allies who betrayed theirs. That's not random cruelty. That's a man rebuilding the entire moral universe around the one thing that shattered his childhood: loyalty as the supreme law. Even his marriage tells the story. When his young wife Bert was kidnapped by the merchants, echoing exactly how his own mother had once been abducted, Temujin didn't cut his losses like a pragmatic chieftain might. He raised an army and burned the merchants down to get her back. And when she returned pregnant with the father uncertain, he raised the boy, Joki, as his own son and never allowed the question to be spoken. The abandoned child refused, categorically, to abandon. Now, I'd be lying to you if I framed this as an inspiring redemption story, because the same psychology had a shadow, and the shadow killed millions. That black and white binary from his childhood, loyal or enemy, nothing in between. He scaled it to civilizations. Cities that surrendered, that stayed loyal, were often spared and absorbed. Cities that resisted or, worse, broke their word to him were annihilated so completely that historians still argue about the death tolls. When the Khwarezmian Empire executed his trade envoys, a betrayal of diplomatic trust, his response erased entire cities from the map. To us, it's monstrous. To the mind forged on that frozen steppe, it was consistent. Betrayal equals death. It always had. The only thing that changed was the scale. And that's the uncomfortable truth about trauma. It doesn't make people good or evil. It makes them extreme. It hands them a lens, and everything, mercy and massacre alike, gets refracted through it. So let's come back to that 9-year-old boy, watching the tents disappear over the horizon. The tribe that abandoned him believed a fatherless family was nothing. 50 years later, that boy's law code protected widows and orphans across the largest empire the world had ever seen. Almost like he was legislating for the family the steppe had left behind. Genghis Khan didn't conquer the world despite his childhood. In a very real, very unsettling way, he conquered it because of it. Here's my question for you, and I genuinely want to hear your answers in the comments. Is a leader shaped by trauma more dangerous or more effective? Or are those the same thing? And if this is your first time here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we release a new deep dive into a historical mind every week. Smash the like button if you made it this far. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this video with that one friend who's obsessed with history. It's free for you, and it means the world to this channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.